up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we'll talk to a man who has an interesting journey. He went from the fast track in New York to running a go-kart place in Collin County, and now he's taken another right turn. His story is just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
So I love the journey that this next guest has taken, because he really was on the fast track in New York doing all that, high finance stuff. And then he decided to choose his family, moved to Texas, started a go-kart place. And now instead of taking left turns, he took a right turn. You really did. Robert Finley is my guest, and he is the managing partner of Onyx Capital Management. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yep. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into, your entire journey, I have to tell the audience, one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I'm starting out my company in 2008, and he was one of the first to believe in me. He hired me in maybe 2009 to promote his go-kart track, and just a pleasure to work with this man.
Yeah. Oh no, it was great. I saw you do a speak at a conference one time about how to generate media buzz for your business. And at that time, I just had an idea in my mind, but I was flying back and forth, New York and Chicago, and I was actually living here in Dallas, and had an opportunity to take over a national position, but I'd have to relocate to New York. And my boys were 6 and 9, and I thought, well, I would really like to stay here and start a business. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to put that guy's number in my phone. And when I think about it, I'm going to call him. So 2 years later, that's what I did.
Well, before we tell everybody what you're doing these days, I want to kind of go back in time.
Okay.
First shout out to your bride. 25 years, is that right?
Yep. We October of last year, 25 years. It's a great picture.
It is a great picture.
We dated 9 years before that, but that was high school, college, and right after. So.
And then you start having babies.
Yep. Started having babies. Skylar and Caden. Yep. And they're now, the oldest graduated Arkansas 2 years ago. That's him right there. And then the youngest, Caden, he's a senior. He was wrestling at OU. He's retired from wrestling now, and he's going to take his master's, so he's got 1 more year to go.
Wow. Okay, yep. So now as your kids are starting to grow, you're saying to yourself, I really don't want to raise them in New York.
Yeah, Dad and I was doing a lot of traveling, and I didn't want to be that weekend dad. Yeah. So I wanted to be at all the events, all the football, wrestling, all the racing that we were doing. Specifically at the time, we were doing a lot of motocross racing.
Yes.
And which is probably one of the reasons why we moved into the go-kart business. It was cute when he was 6 and 7 years old, racing around the ground. Then he was 12 and 13. He was in the air, and it wasn't if, it was when.
Yeah.
And my wife couldn't stomach it anymore, and I said, well, let's get him out of the air, get him on the ground, and let's build a business around it.
Yes.
And slow life down, stop traveling so much.
We've got a little video. It's got a point of view video at the pole position raceway. How many years did you run that?
We had it almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yep.
And it was very successful.
It was very successful. It was kind of an expensive build. Being now that I'm in that business is kind of interesting. I look at all different types of businesses. That one was just over $2 million to build it. I brought a partner in, who was kind of a silent partner, but he helped on the back end with finances. And then we had a note, and we were debt free after 2 years. And at that time, management teams were up and running. We were very successful. The question was, do I go expand into buy more pole position raceways or do something else? And I actually ran into a guy who used to have a private equity firm who just moved from New York to Dallas. And one thing's led to two, and we started talking, how he makes his living, and he sells businesses. And so that's kind of what inspired me a little bit to move in that direction. And we started working together, and that's kind of what we do today. So
Okay, so explain to me what you do exactly. M&A consultant.
M&A consulting is mergers and acquisition. The easiest way to explain it is I sell businesses, right?
And I bet as a business owner, you can relate to the people that your
Yeah.
customers, right?
So the biggest thing about selling a business is really getting your arms and understanding, do you have systems in place? Do you have an operations manual? Do you have processes in place? You know, there's 5 real key components we look at: administrative, operations, we look at marketing and sales, which are different, by the way. And you have systems around all of those. And then the leadership. What does the leadership of the company look like? So we start there and we look at, how do we now value this business? And most people have a misconception on how you value business. Most people always say, oh yeah, it's 3 to 5 times, right? And they think it's their top line number. It's really not. It's really net income. If a company's doing $3 million a year and they think they're worth 3 times that, it's not worth $9 million. If they're only netting 300,000, it'll take them decades before they get their money back, right?
Got it. Wow, that's news you can use, folks. Get a notepad for this broadcast.
Right.
So tell us about the last couple years. I have to imagine during COVID, there were businesses that were having to have like a fire sale. They're
So
going
they
down.
did. So I got heavy really into this business of selling businesses around 2015, 2016. And we were selling just our group alone 10 to 15 a year. And then I packaged up my own business in 2018 and sold that. And we started to grow. 2019 was a good year. It got really, really quiet. And literally about 70% of the businesses we were representing actually went out of business. Wow. 2021 was an absolute banner year. We did over $230 million in business transactions that year. With our largest being $95 million. But what happened is all of the private equity monies that were sitting on the sidelines to try and buy a business in 2020, they didn't put that money to work. So now you had double the amount of money because typically private equity, they put money to work 5 to 7 years. And they got investors and they have these mandates. They get in, turn over a company, sell it for more, and then they go deploy that capital into another direction. So last year, we saw so much money chasing deals like we've never seen before. To give you an example, the largest one we sold last year for $95 million, we actually took it out on the street at 7 times their EBITDA, which is their net income. They were doing about $12 million in net income on $40 million top line revenue. We listed that at $84 million, which is 7 times that. We actually started getting offers over the ask.
That's
like
incredible.
in real estate, like you see houses today, you don't put an offer in unless you put $100,000 on top of the ask price. So we wound up selling that for 7.5 times, and it was a bidding war. In fact, our highest offer was like 106, but the way they wanted to structure the deal just didn't work with the sellers. So.
That's amazing. Okay, give advice to people who are thinking, okay, I probably do want to sell in the next 3 to 5 years.
Right.
What kind of things should they be doing now?
Well, for starters, you got to be able to defend your numbers, financials, good, proper financials, QuickBooks or whatever system you use. You got to have good P&L and balance sheets and tax returns. I see this all the time because you don't want to pay taxes as a business owner, so you run everything through there. But it gets kind of crazy. I've seen people run their Ferraris and all their different cars through there. They've got kids on the payroll and they pay their mortgage payments through there. And you're doing $8 million in revenue and you show $50,000 in profit, right? That's hard to sell a business like that. So you got to clean a lot of that stuff up. Take all that stuff out, run a business like a business, and pay the taxes on what you should be paying on. So really, proper financials is probably the number one thing. Make sure that when you're selling a business, is there growth potential? Put yourself in the buyer's shoes, because at the end of the day, when you sell a business, that's the finish line for you. It's the starting line for somebody taking over. And they really write 2 checks. They write a check for the business, and the second check is the working capital, right? To move forward and continue growth and expansion. I get this all the time when I talk to business owners. They say, well, my business back in the 80s used to do. Or, if somebody really applied this stuff, here's what it can do. No one really buys what it used to do and what it can do. It's what it is doing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Show me the numbers.
I can see why you're so successful. So how about, this is the Great Resignation. There's a lot of people who, have climbed the top of the little hill and
Yep.
say, I hate corporate America. I
Yep.
want to do my own thing. Is it better to buy a business or start a business?
So the old saying is, and it's very true, 80% of the business fail the first year, and then 80% of those businesses fail the next 4 years. So in 100 businesses, after 5 years, 4 succeed, right? So it's very, very tough and challenging. It's actually better to buy an existing business because you've got history, you've got systems, you got people already in place, and people know what to do, and you can kind of plug and play. So that's why we think it's so successful. And I think you and I talked right before the show. I read the book E-Myth after I started my first business, and almost had I read it before, I may not have opened it up, because the summary of that is a guy who, works, he's a shoe cobbler, right? And he's working on shoes, and his boss comes in, he's yelling at him because he's not turning around the shoes fast enough. So he goes, you know what, forget that. I'm going to go across the street, start my own business, put you out of business. I'm going to make all the money like I'm making you all the money right now, right? But what happens when he goes across the street? He does everything but actually make shoes. He does the advertising, he does the marketing, he does the administrative side, he does the accounting side, he's got to hire people, he's got to do this and that. And he does everything but the thing he loved the most, which is make shoes.
Wow.
So that's the reason why a lot of businesses fail, because they think, I just want to go do this. You don't do that. You do everything but that.
You're a great storyteller. We need to have you back. We're almost out of time. So final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
Final thoughts. If we, on our website, if you're thinking about buying a business or selling a business, we have some things you should look at and to do. We see a lot of people that are wanting to buy businesses today, specifically because they started working from home from COVID.
Yep.
Now they're having to go back to the office, and they don't want to go back to the office. And if they can't work from home, then they want to maybe do their own deal. So we are getting tons of people looking to buy businesses. In fact, we have more buyers than sellers today.
That's amazing. Congrats on your success. I'm
Thank
certainly
you.
not surprised, and thank you for sharing your journey.
Sure.
We're going to end with the website, which is onyxcm for capitalmanagement.com.
Yep.
Robert Finley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.